Dear young married couple, have you ever wondered, when should I start investing? And if you know the answer to that question, maybe you've wondered, how do I start? Where do I start?
Well, we had these questions, and you're going to have to excuse my voice. I've lost it. I don't know where it is, and I'm still looking for it. But we actually had these questions that Chris and I were asking some time ago. We had been focused on our degrees. We both got degrees, and degrees cost a lot of money. And we finally paid those off, thank God. And then we were like, what do we do now with our money?
Yep.
Like, we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves after retirement. We want to be able to retire, let's say that. So what do we do?
Even though we'll never stop doing Dear Young Married Couple.
Yes. Yes. Well, so what we did is we actually reached out to a good friend of ours who we trust, is trustworthy, that knows a lot about finances and money. And he's with us today. Yes. His name is Byron Tanner, and a great person to talk about this awesome subject.
So welcome, Byron, to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, we're honored that you're with us. Byron Tanner is a certified financial planner, and he is the co-founder of Tanner Accountancy company, and he's the CFO at Wilson University, and just has a wealth of knowledge. But I think my favorite thing about him is that he's anointed. So even though, Byron, you've gone to school for what you do, you have all the certifications for what you do, you have spoken into our lives in such an anointed way. And we're so grateful for the wisdom and really leadership that you've demonstrated in our lives. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I'd like to meet this guy.
Oh, we're grateful.
We really are grateful. And one of the coolest things too is like they do forensic accounting. So they testify in court and for big companies and get into the weeds with numbers.
So my advice to anyone who's listening to this podcast that's looking for a couple is marry somebody smarter than you. That's what I did. So yes, my wife is also a CPA. So for the last about 12 years, I left the financial planning industry with a regionally, the largest regional money manager in Sacramento, and focused on getting our accountancy company up and running and scaling a little. And so with the left hand, we're doing a few other things right now, and some exciting things to come as well.
Yeah, you guys are scaling a lot.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
But one of the things that you've really helped us with is in this realm of what do we do with our money? How do we protect ourselves for when we do get old? Because that's not a if, it's a when.
That's right.
And we don't want to be working a dead end job that we hate, that we're not capable of doing because we're getting so old. That's scary. So how do young couples start? Where do they start?
Yes, that's a great question. And so I'm going to lead in with a couple more cliches, right? So we don't have enough already. So in the parlance of finance, using financial jargon, there's a cliche for everything. But one of the most important things that you have to ask yourself is, when am I going to start? And so you have to, here's the couple cliches I'm going to throw out. You have to start with the end in mind. And that's number one. And so we can unpack that because that obviously means something. And then also one that I really like a lot, and it can be used not only in finance, but in any area of your life when you're trying to develop. People never plan to fail, but they fail usually to plan.
Right.
And so that's pretty key. And so we've started with, 3 or 4 different cliches, and some questions. So if you are at a point to where this is in the forefront of your mind, it's occupying headspace, what am I going to do for retirement? It is a concern. It is a worry. Then that is your number one key and indicator that you need to stop and start making a plan. Right.
Yeah,
so you don't want to be the person that fails to plan now.
Right. But how many people have this fear but never want to look at it because they're scared of what they'll find? Like, I know people like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that crosses many different subjects in our life, right? Whether we're dealing with that relationship that's probably has a difficult person that you need to address, or that could be you. It could be, you could be self-aware enough to realize there's a lot of things that are not necessarily great in my life, could be toxic, could be spreading, and it's just easier not to deal with it sometimes, So you have to stop and you have to deal with things that have immediacy as far as, there's things you can do right now. And then also they have implications for what kind of future you're going to have.
Right. Yeah.
You've got to focus on what type of future you want to have now. Right.
So good.
Yeah.
So when you have people come to you, whether that's in the financial planning world, or even I know you mentor a lot of people and do some of the premarital counseling at our church when it comes to finances. When people don't have this question, like maybe it's just not even on their mind, what are some of the reasons you find that they're not even thinking about this?
Yeah. Well, I think it could be a lack of knowledge, right? Of who do I trust to talk to this about? Some people are very private when it comes to discussing their finances, and there's probably some of that could be inherited biases, that they have from family members, or they could have been taught. We don't talk about these type of things, People are very private about their finances, and so they're very reluctant then to go seek advice. And not only that, how do you choose through the myriad of messages that are coming your way? I mean, you can't pick up your phone. We're talking now and our phone's listening. So everyone that's going to listen to this podcast is going to be flooded, right, with all the different financial ads, right? Because we're speaking into our phones right now. Hey, can you help me, right? So, but that is true. How do you choose, right? When there's a multitude of choices, sometimes people can get paralyzed. So number one, a lack of knowledge. And then number two, I know I need to do something about it, and I know I can go get help, but out of these myriad options that exist, which one is the best fit for me?
Right.
Who can I trust? Right. All those are barriers.
So it's easier just to turn it all off.
Well, it's just easier to say, I'll deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think for us, there was that lagging or that nagging, I hope we're going to be okay. That little nervousness of finding out, man, you guys are way behind the 8 ball here. You guys should have done this 15 years ago, sort of thing.
You don't want to hear the lecture, right?
Yeah. It's scary to find out yep, you guys prepare to be, working at some dead end job you hate, gas station. No offense to people who like their gas station job.
We all have to start somewhere.
We do have to start somewhere.
Right.
So there's that fear and fear of finding out that bad news, I think.
Right. Yeah. So if people are like, okay, I get it. I need to face, the music. I need to start focusing on retirement. And they're just like, I don't even know what that means. Maybe they've never done a budget before. Maybe they're still in debt. How would you guide someone in the beginning of this process?
Yeah. So the very first thing, I think it all starts in that 6-inch space, our mind, right? So then what does that mean, our mind? It's you've got to make a conscious choice and decision. We've been dancing around this. Where do I start? Start where you are, right? So I've introduced the third cliche into this, right? But why am I focusing on that? Because once you realize I have to start where I am, you're more than likely going to do that. There's something called, and I may butcher the name of this, but it's the Zeigarnik effect, and named after a psychologist, Zeigarnik, and it has to do with putting off procrastination. And she did a study where she noticed that she was sitting in a cafe, and everyone that was the wait staff, they didn't have a notepad. They were not taking notes. They were asking people what their orders were, complicated, small tables, large tables, drinks, food, and all the different options. And they were getting every order correct. And so she wanted to look into that process. Why? And hence we have a Zygarnik effect. So one of the things that talks about is that when you actually start a process, begin a process, that creates an open loop in your mind. So you can dance around it forever, but actually poking at it, getting a starting point, saying today is the day I will do this. And so that also leads into another study that was done by the Wharton School of Business, one of the premier business schools in America in Pennsylvania. And it has to do with the law of first starts or fresh starts. Okay. And so that is why you see gyms fill up the beginning of the year. I mean, there were different avenues that they tested to see if the fresh start effect actually got people to start. And that's what we're talking about here. And so the Zygarnik effect also, goes into that. Once you make an attempt to start, it creates an open loop in your mind. And so the waiters were able to do this successfully because they had this open loop that was created, but as soon as they delivered the order, they were able to close that loop, right? And so you're most likely, I think the takeaway is you're most likely once you start something, right, to close that loop, because we don't like open loops, so
that's why we don't open them.
Yeah. So that is very true. So there's some things you should never open. The Pandora's box, right? There's some boxes that should remain closed. And then there's some that are open you need to close, and you need to move them out of your life. But we're talking about, not in a pejorative sense now, we're talking about moving towards something for your future, a financially healthy future, a financially designed, the future that you design, right? We're talking about retirement, which is an interesting concept. And, we'll delve into this in detail and actually have some fun with some scenarios on the live date night. So stay tuned.
Sneak
You'll want
preview.
to come back for that. We'll have a lot of fun with that. But once you realize that you have an open loop, you're most likely then to say, okay, I've already started. Let me go find some help.
Yeah.
Let me go find some help.
This is really where we started. It was just this. We just paid off our loans, our student loan, and we had set some stuff aside, but not much. And we're like, we got to get some help. We don't want to get 15, 20 years down the road and then think, oh man, we should have got help.
Yeah.
So we were talking about it probably for a couple months before we reached out, I think.
Right. Well, the Zygarnik effect is really resonating because for us at least, and I think probably for a lot of young couples, they don't want to open the loop. So they don't even start because they know that once they're in the loop, they're going to need to get all in and close it. They want to actually, put both feet in. So I think that's why the hesitancy is there, because they know it's going to require budgeting and it's going to require changing things in their finances. And
or they're going to have a lot less money.
They think so, right? It's a commitment.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, you are hitting on something that is important. So far we've just basically talked about the psychology that exists around getting started.
Yeah.
This fill in the blank here is finances, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about finances. So we haven't even gotten to how do we do this, or where should we, we've gotten to where should we start, and
Making
that is
a decision
right now.
Yes.
Right now
Yes.
is the best time to start, right? And where we've touched on that, where you are, but so let me go back to what you're saying here though, the psychology of, okay, we open a loop, we know, okay, now it's open, I'll have to close that. So let's just, the fear then of adding another loop, right? So we're juggling all these balls, right? We just graduate from college, or we're close to graduating from college. I'm going to have to start paying the interest on that debt, or I'm actually going to have to start paying that debt. It hasn't been forgiven yet, so that's a big thing, that's out there. And
a lot of people think their debt will be forgiven when a lot of it won't be.
Yeah. And what does that actually mean? So all of these, I think, are things that kind of make you scared to open the closet door, right?
Yeah.
Or just actually to push things and keep it there. Right?
It's the unknown.
It's the unknown.
Yeah.
You
so
know,
let's take some of the unknown away.
Yeah.
Right now.
So I think one of the greatest things, and we can go into great detail about this, but there's been a lot of articles written about this, a lot of podcasts made about this, because it is important. And Einstein even said it's the eighth wonder of the world.
Really?
And he didn't say it this way, but this is the way I say it: the power of in.
Okay.
Right.
Tell us what the power of in
It
is.
is the eighth wonder of the world. Period. In the podcast, we're done. No. So
talk to us about the power of N. You did this for us in your office,
Yeah.
and we want our listeners to hear about the power of N.
Well, the power of in is actually something that will help you when it comes in terms of framing your fears, right?
Okay.
And especially if you're young, right? Because when we get into that, you'll realize that there are only 4 or 5 levers that we have. And I didn't bring my actual financial calculator with me, but I have it on my phone.
Okay.
So hopefully by the time we're doing our podcast, we can have a resource up there where I'm not just holding my phone up or alluding to what's on my phone, but you can actually see the keys that I'm talking about. And anyone in the finance industry uses a financial calculator, because when you're trying to save for a goal sometime in the future, you use something called a basic concept in financial math called the time value of money.
Okay.
You'll see the abbreviation or the acronym TVM, right? But it stands for the time value of money. And so it answers a question, many different questions, but there's 5 different inputs to calculating time value of money calculations. And I've already alluded to one, and the most powerful one that I love to talk to young people about. It's the power of in. So on your financial calculator, when you're going to do a calculation, and you're going to look at 5 different keys. Okay. And I'll try not to lose everybody and make this boring here. All right. I'm looking to you guys, the podcast experts, to keep us engaged. Okay. So you don't have to guess about one of them, right? It's in.
All right. We got that one.
And I'll come back to what that means. So the mystery in, we know it's powerful, but we'll come back to that.
Okay.
That stands for interest rate.
Okay.
And we can talk in more detail about that, just high level right now.
Okay.
There's a key called PV, Paul Victor, PV, present value. That's what I have in my pocket right now to take out, right, and to put in an investment account. Okay. It's what's on you right now.
It's your pocket.
Right. And so that's another fearful thing, because sometimes there's this misnomer that if we don't have anything, if we don't have a seed to plant right now, then we can't get started.
Yeah.
So, or if we don't have a large enough seed to plant.
Generally, it's that.
They think their seed's way too small.
Yeah, it's
right?
way too small. It's going to take forever. Well, we'll deal with that in a second, because spoiler alert, PV is not the most important key on this calculation. Okay. Then there's something called payment, PMT, right?
Okay.
All right. One last key is the one, what is this all going to equal in the future?
Okay.
FV, future value. So you have the 5 different keys, right?
Okay.
All right.
So,
And those are located at the top, right?
well, on my calculator, they are, right? And this is a old school, well, it's on my phone, but I have the old school, I'm giving away my age here, financial calculator, the preferred financial calculator, HP12C.
That's the preferred financial calculator.
Yes.
And if you don't want to calculate all these things, or you don't know how to, you can always contact someone like Byron.
Yeah, of
And they'll
course.
help you out.
Of course. Or, you know, you could probably ask Google to do it now.
Well, I mean, spoiler here, but when we went into his office and he sat down with these numbers, at first I was like, okay, we're throwing around a lot of like high stuff, right? Like I understand some of it, but as we started putting numbers and our numbers to it, it all started to make sense of like, okay, I could see that. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
So
it gets really fun and powerful with that N.
It does. So why is N so powerful, especially to getting started early? Okay.
Yep.
So N equals the number of periods that the interest the seed money you started with, the additional money you're going to add to it has to grow. It's how long is this seed going to be
Say
planted?
that one more time. So what are those three things?
Okay. So N represents the number of periods that the interest rate's going to work, the present value, right? That seed you had to plant. It may not be large, right? And then any future sums, the payment that you have to add to that. N represents how long that germinates. It's a seed, right? Is it a 10-year period? Is it a 20-year period? Is it a 30-year period? Is it a 40-year period?
So in short, N is time.
N is time.
Okay.
That's good.
N is time.
So say we had $100 of seed money.
Yeah.
So you put $100 in, not much. And then you're saying what we do is we look at the interest rate, say it's 10% just to make it easy. And then what was the other one?
So if you're looking at how much you have to put in, it's
And then
pretty
how
small,
much you're adding.
right? And then how much you're adding, that's the payment, right? So you may be able to do only $100 this year, right?
Okay.
But let's say next year you can do 100 plus another 100, right? So you'll want to add in to your payment. You want to factor that in, right?
Good.
Yeah.
And then your interest rate, of course, right?
Okay.
So if you're doing a small calculation like that, it's easy to do. It's easy to predict a future value, right? But I think where you really get to understand the power of N, right, is when you take a scenario, a real life scenario.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, so I think, I've did a quick one here, and we'll probably go through this again on the podcast. But, those of you who know me, I have two wonderful daughters, excellent daughters. And if I was sitting here today and I was going to do this example to my daughter, Aiden Noel, who is 15, I would use her age and I would use my age.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do
now,
that.
my coin purse is a little bit bigger than her coin purse. Okay. So, but.
Didn't know you had a purse.
Well, okay. Coin purse. I don't even have a coin purse. I'm surprised I'm still carrying a wallet, right? Yeah. Because now, what's the point? It's they don't take cash anywhere anymore, right? It's that anachronistic thing called cash, right? It's all digital now, right? I'm still in an analog world, so I am the analog. She is the digital,
right?
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with my age. 51 years old. There it is. It's out on the table. My daughter is the palindrome of that. 15.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just noticed that as I'm looking down here.
Perfect.
Okay. Now we're both going to end at the same age.
Okay.
I want to stop at 65.
Okay.
She wants to stop at 65. Okay. So we both have a different start date, same end date, year-wise. Okay. The end's going to be different. Okay, what is my end? Well, 51 to 65, I've got 14 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you better start putting a lot of money in.
Yeah, I better. So for her, she has 65 years. 15 to 65, she has 50 years.
Okay. It's a long time.
So that's kind of the differences here. Now, I'm not going to get out into weeds on interest rates because as we have seen with the effect of printing endless amounts of money, and I'm not making this political because both parties are doing this and have been doing this, there is a day when the piper has to be paid, and excess money supply, and when the velocity of money outstrips the creation of goods and services, we end up with inflation. And so we're in an inflationary period now where the rule of thumb as financial advisors that we used over the last 20, 25 years was 3%. Man, that sounds great right now.
Right.
Right. And we were even like, that's a little high. We could dial that down. So we won't get too far into weeds on that. But for me, I'm going to choose an interest rate because I only have 14 years. So I don't have multiple business cycles to have my money at risk. There's always expansion and contraction in economies, right?
Okay.
And as the economy expands and contracts, so do investments, so do companies, right? Companies hire more, they lay people off. Therefore, the valuation of these companies are reflected in their stock prices, right? And so if you're invested in the market, and there's many different markets, but when we say the market, we're usually primarily talking about the stock and bond market and liquid assets such as CDs, certificates of deposits, things of that nature. So that kind of makes up those three categories. There are others, and we can talk about that at length in another podcast.
Or come to date night. We'll talk about
exactly,
more of
in
that.
date night. We'll talk about more asset classes, but those are the three primary asset classes that comprise a portfolio. So in my portfolio, the risk I'm assuming is 5%. That means that I'm not getting too far out there, right? So, and I'm probably going to need to pare that back as I get closer to the end of my 14 years.
You don't want to risk.
Don't want to risk it, right?
Okay.
So if we have a contraction at year 12 or year 13,
you're going to work a little bit longer than you wanted.
Right. That is very true. If I'm not risk adjusted to my scenario.
And that's common. So like as you get closer to your target age for retirement, sorry guys. So as you get closer, you pare back the risk you're willing to take with that money.
That is correct. And it's adjusted based off of your needs, right? And so usually we peg our need to a certain age, right? We usually do that. So in my case, I'm choosing 5%. And let's just keep the math simple. She can take on far more risk than that, but I'm going to keep her at 5%.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so far I've got my input into my calculator. Okay, for me, the father, 14. I've got my I input, my interest rate, which is 5%. Okay,
which is really low.
It's very low.
So
well, for her, right? That would be
correct
way too
for her.
low.
Yeah. Now that may be appropriate for me where I am.
Yeah.
We have to look at other factors.
So typically, though, for someone her age, where would she normally fall within risk?
She's going to probably be
like 12%.
Well, so it's not necessarily percent that I'm looking for. Well, now you got to put a percent in the calculator. But what's driving that? What's it pegged to? Right. And so it's usually pegged to historical returns. Right. Historical returns of what? Well, where your money's invested. Right. In this case, in the three big asset classes that make up what we call the market, but stock, bonds, and liquid assets. So
she'd probably do stocks.
So the S&P on average has returned 10%. So, I mean, that's a safe number to take, if you're as young as my daughter is and you're going to have that money invested. So now I'm putting that in the calculator, but that only reflects a historical return. You can do far greater than that. And we can look at S&P market returns, right? And we're talking about on average over the last period, measurable period that we use in financial planning. So she's going to be in a portfolio, though, that will probably expose her to 80% stock risk, where I would be in a portfolio that would only expose me probably to 60% stock risk at the start of my 14 years. Okay. So, but for this scenario, I'm just trying to make a point about the power of in. So I'm saying she's going to be in the old guy's portfolio. Okay. I'm going to risk adjust her to where I am.
Just to make it easy for everybody. And easy.
So hopefully we're not losing anybody. We all feel like we're kind of where we need. Okay. So there's 3 more keys. Well, 2 more keys, and then we'll hit the calculation. We'll hit future value. We'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah.
We'll get our surprise numbers. Okay. Present value. What do I have to invest right now?
What are you going to do?
Well, we were talking about my purse, my MERS.
Your MERS.
So I'm actually going to say 0. Okay.
Oh, you are.
For this scenario. Okay. And then for her, it's easy. She has 0. Right?
She has negative.
Right. And we were joking about this. This daughter loves to read, and she has probably over 300 books. So all her coin is invested into books, which hopefully translates right into knowledge,
money.
right?
There you go.
In the future. She's
There's her
building that
investment.
base, right? She's developing herself. So we both have zero. So we've taken care of the present value key.
Okay.
All right, now this is where it's going to be a little bit different. Payment. That means, okay, I didn't have anything sitting there to invest, but what am I going to take out of my earnings this year
Okay.
and put away? What's she going to take out of her earnings this year and put
Okay.
away? Okay. And by the way, and we can get into some of the detail around this, and I don't carry around all these numbers at the top of my head, but you can actually employ your children in your business up to a certain amount every year. you
Yeah.
know? So she can start earning income in our business, which she will do, and developing some skills. So the investment account so this is good. We had zero to start with, right? But you're not going in your backyard and let me jump ahead. I'm going to put $6,000 a year,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Of my current earnings,
Of your
current earnings
Okay.
into my account.
Okay.
Okay. And then she's going to put half of that, $3,000 of her earnings
a year.
into her account. And we
Okay.
can divide that by 12 and figure out what that is, because we usually go on a monthly basis. All right. But we're not going in our backyard and digging a hole, right? Again, you're not going to get 5% under your mattress.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. So,
Or even in your savings account.
right. So it has to be
There's a parable
invested
about
in the
that.
market. So, but where do you go to do that?
Right.
Okay. And what vehicle do you use to do that? So, and here's the other thing, because as we talked about earlier, one of the things that keep people from starting is all the choices. Who do I trust?
Right.
Well, then here's another thing. There's many different types of accounts to use as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
And so for this sake, we're going to start with one of my favorite ones to talk about, especially for youth, is a Roth IRA. Okay, as long as you generate the income that you're allowed to put away up to the limits, right? And so for me, thankfully, I'm not 55 yet. It's 6,000, right? So I'm going to put up to my limit. That's why I chose 6,000.
Okay.
And that'll
That's
be
my
most
limit.
people listening. 6,000 is their limit. Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part.
Per person.
Well, for your podcast, because they're young married couple. So, I'm pretty soon going to be in the 55 and up category.
still call you young, Byron.
Thank you. And then I can put an additional 1,000. But I'm going to put the 6,000 in, and she doesn't have as much coin, right? Her salary, I'm not paying her a lot right now. And she hasn't gotten all the skills that she needs to get, but she's still valuable. So she's going to put 3,000 a year away.
Okay.
All right. So we've got all of our inputs in. My in is 14. My daughter's in is 50. We're at 5% each. All right. We know that that's not in our backyard, right? It's in a portfolio. We know what kind of an account it's in. It's in a Roth account. Okay. We started with zero. I'm putting in 6,000 this year and the next 13, right? To get to my goal. She's going to put in 3,000 this year and the next 49 to get to her goal.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Are we ready for
Let's
the reveal?
push the button.
So, any guess off the top of your head, Adam, on what father over here earns? There's
I have no idea. You're not making nearly as much as she is.
That is correct. That is correct. So,
Even though you're putting in double.
I'm putting in double.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which there are couples that are listening to this probably that need to do this,
Yes.
even though they have 14 years of doing it.
If you have not done it, you need to start.
Yes.
Start where you are. You can't start in yesterday.
Nope.
Because it's gone.
No.
You can't start where I am because you're not me. Right? You can't start where your neighbor is. Your father is. Your best friend is. You can't start where any luminary in the financial world is. You have to start where you are. And you can't even say, I'll start tomorrow, because scripture tells us, it's not given.
It's not given.
Yeah.
It's not given. We have to start now, start today. Hence the cliche, start where you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So
All right.
my number,
Okay. Your number.
$117,500.
Okay.
Which is Great.
It's good. That's great. I've
That'll
saved
be
that much
helpful.
money, right? And compound interest has worked for me. Now I didn't write this down, so let me do this real quick. So I'm going to calculate here what my basis is. So you'll hear that word thrown out a lot. It's part of terminology or parlance of finance. Basis. It just means what you put away,
Okay.
Right.
not what compounded. Okay.
Okay.
So the 6,000 a
it's
year.
kind of good to know what you put away and then what your money did for
Right,
you.
so
Right.
how
So
much
let's
did
do
you
that.
put-
So 6,000,
14.
14. I think I can do that calculation. 84,000.
Yeah.
So that's all you
Yeah.
put away.
That was my part.
And it turned into 117.
Yes. And that was what the eighth wonder of the world did with this, right? Mm-hmm. Compounding interest.
And this is really starting to pick up steam too. Like if you left it a few more years,
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
like what if
Yeah.
you left it for 5 more years? What would it do?
So at 5 more years, we can do that. So let me do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my N was 14, right? So I'm going to change that to 19.
Okay.
My I is 5%. My present value is 0. Okay. Then I'm putting away 6,000. Okay. So now my future value went from $117,500 to $183,000.
which is significant.
Yeah.
Just for 5 more years.
5 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see how the snowball effect, the compounding effect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Einstein was a pretty smart guy.
He was.
You know, he had a
Yeah.
couple breakthroughs, but for him to say, wait a minute, this actually should be the eighth wonder of the world. And that's why we call this the power of N.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about 08ing over here.
But this is like, I guess where I'm trying to get through to people is like, even though you only have 19 years left, you could probably use $180,000
Upon retirement.
upon retirement.
Exactly.
It's going to help. It's going to ease your mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may be the deciding factor. Can I stop working?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, health is going to be a determining factor
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Okay.
It
So
will.
take us to Aiden.
Okay, let's
Tell
go.
us- tell us
let's
about
go.
Aiden.
Let's do the big reveal. Okay. So again, recapping so she was 15. We're saving to 65. That gave her 50 years.
Right.
5%, same rate. She could take on more risk in that. Okay?
Far more. And
Far more.
realistically,
Yeah.
she would.
Right.
Yeah.
She has 0 because I haven't given her any seed money, but I've given her a job. Right.
Yeah.
She's putting away half of what I did. Don't forget that.
Right.
Yeah.
Only 3,000. So after 50 years, she is at $628,000
Look at that.
versus my $117,000. Putting in less than what I did, half of what I did, right? And so that's the power of starting now.
Yeah.
Starting where you are today.
And,
So good.
And 5% is far below market.
Yeah,
With
for
the mar-
funsies, put it at 10%
Yeah,
because
okay.
that's the
Well,
S&P 500.
So, so let's do that. Well, actually, let me say if she's able to save 6,000, right?
Right.
So let's say she was putting in the full 6,000.
Okay.
She could.
So $500 a month.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's keep it at the 250 just for people listening who are like, I don't know if I have any discretionary funds. Let's say if you can squeeze $250 a month.
Which is not a
so
lot.
$3,000 a year.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Let's
just
do
like
that.
Aiden at
Okay.
$3,000 a year.
Okay. Excellent.
And let's even say starting at 25.
Okay.
So 25 to 65. So
we have
they're
40.
40 years of saving.
Right.
And they're
And
at
you-
10%.
10%. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go with the.
Because that's average. That's S&P 500. They
Right.
could do far better.
Okay. So we have an N of 40.
Okay.
We have an I of 10. Now the present value.
Starting with 0.
0. Okay. And they're putting in $3,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay.
Well, what's
Are you
their
gonna
number?
believe that?
All right, folks. I wanted you to see this number. So you would end up with $1.3 million upon retirement at age 65.
Right. This is doable.
That's doable. $250 a month.
250.
So this actually is like you open. So you think there's like a monster under your bed, right? I'm not getting out of the bed. I need to use the restroom or need to get the water, right? The kids, right? But we all had to overcome that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And, one of my favorite cartoon characters, and again, I'm dating myself here, was Calvin and Hobbes, right? And his
love those
imagination is so, and I loved his monster imagination, right? They were like bigger than life, right? And he hears all these noises coming down the hall, and it's got to be a monster. And so he gets his dart gun out, right? And he's ready. He's all geared up. The door opens, and he shoots every dart he has, and it's his dad. And you remember what, I mean, it did not go good for Calvin, right? So, but this is one way to actually slay your monsters, right? Is knowledge, knowing, you know what, turn the light on. There's nothing to be afraid about.
Love that.
Let's actually, this is doable.
It really is doable. And that's $250 a month. But like, that's assuming that that's all you could do.
Yeah.
Like if Aiden started putting in at, let's say 35, when her income earning potential goes way up.
Yeah.
She's going to be putting in 500
Absolutely.
a month.
Or more.
Or
like
more.
when your earning potential goes up, you can put in a lot more.
Now, I don't want to make this oversimplistic because I know that there's going to be other financial professionals looking at this and saying, you know what, you need to really sharpen your pencil and you need to talk about, you know, as they get older, you need to talk about dialing into risk and all that. Look, this is just for the purpose of illustration.
Yeah.
And this is, you've got to start breaking the ice and start demystifying finance for people.
right.
You know, I mean, why do we want to make this way more complicated than it should be?
So people can make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
Well,
So-
this is so enlightening. I like how you said turn on the lights.
Yeah.
Yes.
Turn them on.
Yeah, we have benefited so much from doing that, turning the lights on.
Yes.
And once we found out that compounding interest, the power of N, and then actually started applying it in our own life, and then working on like how much do we want to end up with?
Right.
So that's probably the next thing that we'll need to talk about.
Yeah.
But what do we need to aim for? Then we adjust to that.
Yeah. What is your retirement number? Like people ask that question a lot. Like, I don't know, how much do I need in retirement?
Yeah.
And so you are actually going to be answering that question for us.
Yes. You know, it's funny because I've got a little folder here and we've talked about the power of N. What is your retirement number? Wow. That's a good one. And there's a lot of demystifying that needs to happen around that as
Yes.
well, because people get really scared. Now there's rules of thumb that are used in our industry. And it's, I kind of liken it to, I hate shopping and I hate buying formal wear, right?
Okay.
Suits and tuxes and things of that nature. So you can either go get it off the rack or you can go custom, you know, and you know how it is. And sometimes trying to actually find a retirement number that works for you is a lot like that. It can be very frustrating. Now, you know, Adam, Carissa are amazing. They're the same weight every time I see them. I wish I had that ability. I'm up and down. I must stress eat a lot, but you know, so that's why I hate shopping. So I don't know. When I go in, it's the mystery number, right? And so a lot of people are kind of like that when they look at their retirement because they're not dialed in yet on the start where you are.
Yeah.
They haven't opened that loop.
Yeah.
For all the reasons that we talked about. And so it's an unpleasant experience every
Right.
time they start addressing this. And there's rules of thumb out there and they'll tinker with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You know? So we're going to demystify that.
Love
right?
it.
Yes.
And so,
Well, when we did, I felt such a relief of like, okay,
Yeah.
we did it. And we weren't even thinking, you know, we're going to do a podcast and all this stuff. This was purely for us. And then we're like, okay, our listeners have got to go through this. They got to listen to this.
Yep.
well, thank you for actually caring about your listeners enough to tackle this subject. And, you know, you're not doing this for any gain. You're actually getting this information. And I'm not either at this point. I want to give back. I want to help people start.
Yeah.
I want to help people, you know, have a future that they're not scratching their head in wonder, right? Or hope is my financial plan. That's not a good strategy.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Because there's a lot of work that will have to be done.
Yeah.
Or relying on loved ones.
You know, I think, no, and I understand, you know, I love the Word of God when it talks about, you know, finance, and it's sprinkled throughout our Bible, you know, the Old and the New Testament, and the principles of saving, the principles of giving thought, you know. There are also some scriptures that can be taken out of context, right? And I've always heard this saying, I love this saying, that a text referring to the Word of God, any text out of the Word of God, taken out of context is a pretext. Right? So a text taken out of context is a pretext. And so they're not a lot, and I don't like to focus on negative things, but there could be people that have heard negativity surrounding, you know, oh, you shouldn't be putting money away because of X, Y, Z. And some people will point to scriptures like, you know, lay up your treasures in heaven, right? Because if you lay them on the earth or you invest them in the earth, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's susceptible to the vagaries of life, right? Moth, rust, dust, you know, all these things can corrupt that, right? And so this is obviously not a scripture that tells us not to take care of our family or take care of our needs, because one of the very early commandments that was given to a people who were getting a national law, becoming a people, right? We're talking about the early people of Israel, the nation of Israel, as they left Egypt. And they met the Lord at Mount Sinai. And they met the revelation of the Lord at Mount Sinai through the tablets and through the other laws that were given and the statutes that were given. We see emanating out of that the imperative to honor our mother and our father, right? So that what? Your days would be long on the earth. So it speaks to a longevity. It speaks to a planning for our future. Sounds a lot like financial planning to me.
And your parents were to live with you, or you were all to live together.
Right. And so, you know, they didn't have 401ks back then, or 403bs or Roth IRAs, but they did have children. Right. And so I think it was incumbent, it was ingrained into the child as they were growing up that you need to be nice to the future older man or older woman you will be, because there will be a day when, if you have honored your parents, and the honor there has a pecuniary sense to it, it means taking care of their needs, not abandoning them, right? In some sense of the word, you're kind of their retirement plan. They're looking to you for your strength, your ability to whatever it is at that time. If it's, you know, planting, if it's raising sheep, you know, whatever it may be, if it's trading, right? You have a responsibility. And so the scripture bakes in very early. So that commandment was given to children, right? The Shema as well, right? This is given to children. Teach your children this. So it should be ingrained into our mind early on, right? Start where you are. There is a future that you want to design. You don't just want to get there, you know, based off of chance and happenstance.
Right.
You know?
So good.
That's so profound. I've never heard that scripture exegeted in such a way. It's profound. It's a light bulb moment for sure.
Well, I think God has our best interest at heart, you know, and his revelation to us, whether it's through scripture or in flesh when he came and he sacrificed for us, it's for our well-being, you know.
It is.
Good.
So thank you so much for your wisdom and all that you've given today. If you want more, we have some good news.
Yes. So if this is airing on Tuesday, so in just 3 more days on Friday, which is the,
19th, I think.
Oh, well, not this Friday, next Friday.
26th.
The 26th. So on Friday the 26th at 5 p.m. Pacific, we will be interviewing Byron live on what is your retirement number. He'll be talking about not only the rules of thumb, like those suits you buy on the rack, but customizing it to your own needs, your own life, your circumstances. We're actually going to pull a couple up, maybe a couple different couples, and talk about your numbers. Yeah. If you're willing to, if you want to get some free financial counseling.
Yeah, and this is not an upsell either.
No. We want
and
you
you
to
can
be
use if you don't want to use your exact numbers. I get that.
Yeah.
Make them up.
There you go. Make them up.
Yeah.
But we want you guys to be equipped. Like we both had blessings in our upbringing and things we wish were different in our upbringing when it comes to all the topics, right? You guys heard us talk a lot about sexuality. Well, finances sometimes is in that same category of, depends on the culture growing up. And we want you guys to be equipped. So Byron's going to help you turn the lights on and really peel back some of the mystery around finances at date night this Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we'll put the registration link in the show notes for you.
Yeah. And we'll be sharing where to go, what maybe some ideas of great companies that don't charge tons of fees that you can, put your money in and invest. So if that's something you're interested in, sorry, my voice is terrible.
It's okay, babe.
If that's something you're interested in, come on and be with us. It's going to be awesome.
Yes. And so also, if you can share with people that are not coming to date night, if they just want to, get more resources on board, you have a resource that you recommend. Can you share what that is?
Yeah. So I'd be glad to do that. So currently, I am working in collaboration with a good friend of ours. We not only do the kingdom of God together. We have a lot of interest. He is breaking into the financial planning, financial services arena, primarily helping people get started, right? Dealing with all the psychological things that are inhibitors to starting. And so he is excellent resource when it comes to, you really need disposable income, right? And discretionary income to start investing. And so we can unpack that some more on date night. But to get started, I have a good friend. His name is Josiah Aston, and I'll be sharing with you more to come in the future about his company and his resources. And so I will be working in collaboration with him when it comes to actually, now that you have money to invest, what type of accounts should you be doing? Is this going to be a do-it-yourself, a DIY type thing? There's robo-advisors out there, which is computer-generated advice, right? That can help you. And there's also the warm and fuzzies, the humans, right? And we can help you get there as well. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. And we'll put that info in the show notes too.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. So go register for date night. Come join us. If you can't join us live, you can watch the replay as well as replays for all the other date nights from the past couple of years. And you'll want to do that. It's only $10 a month and you get so much value for your marriage, for your life, and specifically this Friday night at 5 p.m.
Seriously, that's worth more than Starbucks.
Serious. Well, we did this.
Yeah.
And it was so
Invest
helpful.
in yourself.
And we're still doing it. We're actively doing it. This was probably a few years ago.
Yeah.
But we started this process and still doing it, and it's been awesome. And we're now seeing returns on that. It's been awesome. So.
Yes. So
Right.
thank you
Well, come join us.
so much, Byron.
Yes.
We look forward to our chat live on Friday night.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be
Yes.
fun. Bring your party hats and your calculators.
Your calculator.
Those two have never been used together. I guarantee you.
You're analog.
If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have questions, you can always throw those into the comments. And we look forward to connecting with you on Friday.